here, and Jesus, like us, was born, and he had a mother. And his mother's name, of course, was Mary. Jesus had a mother, and Jesus also had an earthly father. And his name, of course, was Joseph. And Joseph, in the culture that Jesus grew up in, whatever your father was, you were pretty much predestined to be as far as occupation. Whatever your father's job was more than likely going to be your job. And Joseph had a job. And therefore, Jesus, in growing up, ended up having a job. And we know that Joseph's job, Joseph's occupation was what? Being a carpenter. So Jesus growing up began to learn the skills of carpentry. My friends, I would like to submit to you on this morning that it is no coincidence that Jesus was a carpenter. I believe that it is significant that Jesus was a carpenter before he started his public ministry. Because I don't know if we have any carpenters in the audience, anyone who's dealt with, because carpenters deal with something on an everyday basis. What is it? Wood. I believe it was significant that Jesus was a carpenter before he started his ministry, because Jesus on an everyday basis would have to deal with this substance, this wood. I don't know if anyone here has ever touched a piece of wood or ever just bumped up against a tree, but if you've ever dealt with wood before, you'd realize that wood isn't the most formable substance. You have to have skills to deal with wood. Because the thing about wood is that in and of itself, when it's a tree, and even when it's cut down, it's not really useful until it's shaped into something. And I don't know if you've ever dealt with wood before, but wood is kind of stubborn. I'm going somewhere. Scoot over, I might sit next to you. Wood is kind of stubborn. It likes to stay the shape that it is. It doesn't like to bend, and it really doesn't like to break. I think it was significant that Jesus was a carpenter before he started his ministry, because you have wood that doesn't like to bend and doesn't like to break, but the way it is when you first encounter it, it's almost purposeless. The only thing it's really useful for is being thrown into the fire. But I don't think that God wants to throw all the wood in the fire. So what he has to do is he has to deal with the wood. I don't know if we have any carpenters, but you know what you have to do to deal with wood? First of all, you have to cut it down. And after you cut it down, you have to begin to shape it, because it has some rough edges. And if you rub up against it the wrong way, you might leave with a splinter. I don't know about anybody else, but don't you know that God has to deal with us? And a lot of us are like wood. We are stubborn, stuck in our ways, and sometimes God has to cut us down and take us into his carpenter shop so that he can begin to deal with us. I believe that it was significant that Jesus was a carpenter before he started his ministry, because we as a people are a stubborn people. We are stuck in our ways, and we are so, whether we like it or not, it's hard for us to change. I had a conversation with a silversmith one time. I don't know if you've ever, I ate breakfast this morning and a spoon was offered to me, and it was a silver spoon. And I remember my conversation with the silversmith. And if you've ever seen silver before it's something useful, it's actually not the most attractive metal. It's kind of rangy and just molded up. But I watched and I had this conversation with this silversmith, and I said, "Silversmith, how do you transition this silver into something, from something useless into something useful?" And he said, "Rashad, here is the process that I do. First and foremost, silver is stubborn. It doesn't like changing. So what I have to do is I have to put it in the fire. I have to apply some heat, because silver outside of the heat will not change. So I have to put some heat to the situation so that it can soften up." And you said, "Rashad, do you know what heat does to silver?" I was like, "What?" It says there are things inside of silver, because it's very hard to find pure pure silver. So when I put it in the fire, the things that are in it, that are not supposed to be in it, because of the fire, begin to fall out. And I was like, okay, that's good, that's good. And he said, okay, so after you put it in the fire, what's that? He said, Rashad, well, after I put it in the fire, it's still not going to become what I want it to become. So I have to take this here hammer and begin to strike the silver and bang on it one piece by piece, so that slowly but surely it will begin to shape into what I want it to be. My friends, I've come this day's journey to suggest that the striking, the pain that you feel in your life, does not suggest God's distance, but rather his closeness. And I don't know if anyone under the sound of my voice has feel like life has hit them, and that it's sometimes too hard. But I dare say that the pain that we feel, especially when we've chosen Christ, suggests that God is closer to us than it feels like. I had one more question for the silversmith. I said, how do you know when it's done? He said, Rashad, that's the easy part. Because the way I know when it's done is when I can look at the silver and see my reflection in it.